Whenever you're ready.
I am a nigger, bound up by the invisible chains that emancipation wrought on me, weighed down by the invisible foot of a nation that looks on in amused contempt and pity. They say to me, be content to sit at your accustomed seat at the nation's feast. To this I surmise, with no Negro past and no Negro future, it is impossible for me to live out my Negrohood in 20th century America. For they say to me, you're not yet white. But yet I am no longer wholly black. I am damned. My presentation today is in the hopes of enlightening you on much of this Negro damnation and an ideological crisis that led to that, the idea of double consciousness. Now, for those who don't know what double consciousness is, this is a term that was coined by W.E.B. Du Bois in 1903 in his infamous book, The Souls of the Black Folk. In it, he tried to convey the mental conflict that existed in the dual identity of being a Negro and an American in the 20th century. Dr. Du Bois, he says, one ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two thoughts, two souls, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, in whose strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. Now, much of the vast socioeconomic problems of the 20th century were due to this double consciousness. You see, freedom from chattel slavery was not fought for and won by the Negro. It was freely given to him. Well, I take that back. It was given him through the Emancipation Proclamation. Now, for any oppressed society and civilization in the world, they can tell you one thing, that true and lasting freedom and independence can never be given by the oppressor. It is always taken through artist means by the oppressed. Case in point, America, 1776, bloodshed. Argentina, 1816, bloodshed. Austria, 1955, bloodshed. Kenya, 1963, bloodshed. Canada, 1867, bloodshed. Brazil, 1822, bloodshed. As a matter of fact, Brazil's motto for independence was Independencia ou Morte, loosely translated from the Portuguese to mean independence or death, for they understood there is a price to pay for true and lasting independence. Now, I posit that the American Negro of the 20th century, and many argue of today as well, is the only one who has never experienced that true and lasting freedom. Now, history is like a clock. I heard it once said that, people used to tell their own version of the time. Now, having his history, identity, and culture beaten out of him systematically through whips and time, the American Negro was fed a new history, a new culture, a new identity by a slave master that had a Eurocentric view of the world, that placed him as a savage that needed to be conquered, that needed to be enslaved in order to be civilized. Now, this idea did one of two things in the 20th century. The first is that it made the American Negro hate himself, so much so that he even hated the skin on his back. The second thing it did was it created a mass-scale cultural inferiority complex that led the American Negro to want to be Anglo-Saxon, to be white in everything he did, the way he thought, the way he walked, even the way he looked. Now, this mass-scale cultural inferiority complex that trickled down into the socioeconomic problems that they had is best described by E.B. Du Bois, as he says, after the Egyptian, the Indian, the Greek, the Roman, the Teuton, and Mongolian, the Negro is a sort of seventh son, born with a veil and gifted with second sight in this American world that yields him no true self-consciousness of himself, but lets him see himself through the eyes and the revelation of the other world. I conclude, it's a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of viewing oneself in the eyes of another, this sense of measuring one's soul with a tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. So, shall we Africanize America? God forbid, because America has a lot to offer the world and Africa. But shall I bleach my Negro soul in a torrent of white Americanism? God forbid. All I ask is with the same watchword of the 20th century Negro that I may be given the right to be an American and a Negro without the doors of opportunity roughly shut on my face, for I too am America. Thank you very much.
All right.